where we source our activism from, and all kinds of wonderful stuff. I'm super excited for the session tonight. I think it's going to be a highlight for me of the program. Before I introduce Nirali, just say a couple words about Zoom. Most of you, I'm recognizing your names. You've been on these calls. At this point, I think most all of us are probably Zoom experts, and you could all be giving this talk yourself. But so I'm not gonna drag it out. Just a couple of reminders about the speaker view option in the top right. So you can kind of toggle. I imagine for some of the time you're going to want to be in speaker view, but for a lot of this, we're going to be talking to each other and looking at each other. And I just want to offer an invitation for anyone who's willing or comfortable to turn your video on so that we can kind of have a sense of being in community together with each other right now. This is going to be, hopefully, we're going to be really connecting on this call. And so it'd just be great to be able to see each other, but totally understand if you're not in a position to do that. We won't, there will be times where we might go into breakout rooms or might have some discussion in the big room here, but the chat is always kind of the main, always available way to be engaging as we go. So throw questions in there, throw thoughts in there. Joanna and I will be doing our best to kind of track any questions that come in, and we'll direct them to Nirali when she's ready for whenever she asks us for questions. Is there anything else I should touch on? Oh, just a disclaimer, and you've probably all heard this disclaimer from us several times, but as Zoom has gotten to be so common over the last several months, unfortunately, that's corresponded with a trend in Zoom bombing or kind of trolling on Zoom calls, and we have experienced this some of this directly in DXE, some of it of a really kind of troubling nature. So we've done everything that we can to make sure that this call is, that's unlikely as possible, and we've taken kind of the steps that we can, but it's always a possibility, especially as we go into breakout rooms and we lose the ability to have some of the sort of controls and safety measures that we can have in the big room just because of the way that Zoom is designed. So just offering that as a bit of disclaimer that something like that might happen, and as Nirali and I were just discussing before the call, maybe if that happens, it'll be a sort of an opportunity it'll stimulate some things about what our subject is tonight. But okay, so logistics out of the way. I'm going to introduce Nirali. This is the first time that the ALC has hosted Nirali, which I'm really excited about because she's someone that Joanna and I we've sort of known and had a little bit of interaction with over the last few months. Many of you, if you've been to the ALC before, you might you've probably heard of the East Point Peace Academy and Kazu Haga, who has for years done the Kingian nonviolence training at the ALC. And Nirali is a colleague of Kazu's at East Point. She has been working with East Point on sort of expanding their sort of training and interest into this area they call fierce vulnerability, which is really kind of zeroing in on the personal work, the personal transformation aspect of nonviolence. And part of that recently, East Point has been pivoting a lot of their attention to a new activist network, which is not yet named, but really focusing, exploring a lot of the questions about sourcing our activism, and they're particularly focused on kind of the intersection of racial healing and climate justice. So super excited to hear from Nirali, so I'm gonna pass it off.
Thank you, Aidan. Thank you, Joanna, for supporting this. And thank you for the Animal Liberation Conference for inviting me here. And most of all, thank you to all of you who are here and who are really offering your precious time to be on Zoom, to be with me, to be with this community, and really engage on a topic that looks and sounds a little charged. And so just naming that when we are going to be talking about grief and direct action, I also want to invite you into fun and joy and beauty and pleasure, because that's, you will begin to see as I keep moving forward in this workshop, how all of that is deeply intertwined. So there might be moments when we might be invited into really touching into some vulnerable or tender emotions that might happen. And so I want you all to learn something that I generally think is helpful in all circumstances to learn, and that is about emotional regulation. So I'm going to just quickly share my screen with you. And maybe some of you are already aware of, I'm wondering, what do you see on my screen right now? Do you?
We see the panic zone, stretch zone, comfort zone.
My screen, there are too many windows open. Okay, thank you. So what this is sort of a framework for you to just track throughout the hour and a half that we will be together. And what I have is the comfort zone. So there are many times throughout the day, throughout the week, when we are kind of in our pajamas, sipping tea, maybe hugging our dog or our cat, and just feeling comfortable about our life. There are times when we feel we are in a stretch zone, like you are right now in this moment. You're kind of stretching yourself to turn on your screen so people are looking at your face. And you're going to be learning something or maybe engaging with something that you haven't learned about. So it's just like asking your nervous system, your emotional body, your energetic body to stretch into something. Panic zone is when we kind of almost enter the trauma vortex, that we are engaging with some information, maybe a memory or maybe some event that is happening in front of me right now, and it's overwhelms my nervous system, it overwhelms my emotions, and so I go into a panic zone. So, and for some people, because there isn't enough tracking and processes or tools of grounding available, they go from comfort zone right into panic zone really quickly. And so part of what we are learning here is to keep slowing down, keep connecting with our breath, keep coming to something that brings a sense of grounding or centering in our heart, in our bodies, in our breath. And so that we have more choice in how we feel, more choice around regulation. And so throughout this time, I invite all of you to really track your system and track your breath, track your body, keep receiving that feedback. Just notice, am I in the comfort zone, the stretch zone, or the panic zone? So with that, I want to invite you all into maybe a 2 or 5 minute short meditation, just something that can support us in feeling more open, more relaxed, maybe letting go of some of the stresses or anxieties or planning that you may have been involved in throughout the day. And really giving yourself this gift of these few minutes to really enter a sense of deep rest. inviting the muscles to open, to soften, to widen, inviting the breath to move and permeate through parts of the body where it naturally wants to. And even giving permission to the hands, to the arms to move if they need to, for the neck, the shoulders. Also, just inviting gentle movement if that is what wants to happen right now. Very slowly making the transition to opening your eyes and entering this space together. While still remaining connected to this sense of ground or nourishment that you feel from within. I'm just looking at all your faces and really feeling appreciation for being in community with all of you for even these few moments. Thank you. Thank you for your presence. So a little bit about me. I live in California, in the Bay Area, in East Bay, close to Berkeley. And I live on the Huchuin Native American land. And I want to acknowledge the presence of the Native communities that lived on this land. And I go by she and her. And I have been fortunate to grow up in India and live also a good part of my life in this country. And I have been also really fortunate to be a part of a lot of direct action movements, social change movements, nonviolent sort of activist movements. I have spent several years working out of the Gandhi ashram in India where I studied deeply the teachings of Gandhi and also worked in a very large slum community right outside the ashram with about 200,000 people living in that community. And in these last several years, I kind of sort of toggle in this role of being a meditation teacher and also working very closely in several activist communities. And as Aidan mentioned, there's some pretty meaningful work that we have been creating at the East Point Peace Academy and the direct action movement that is springing from that. And one of the important theses for me personally in that movement is that how can we discover together that how can a thriving direct action or activist movement be as disruptive with a silence shattering force to dismantle oppressive structures, to maybe block a highway, maybe to stop a coal train, to put our bodies on the line, and yet be deeply rooted in the wisdom of our interconnectedness, in nonviolence, and in our vast capacity for healing. So there are a few different theses that I'm going to try to investigate together with you. So these are just hypotheses. And one of that hypothesis is that vulnerability is a strength, and to be able to connect with one's own vulnerability is perhaps an essential process in order to make a activist or a direct action experience effective. And so we'll talk more about that. The second thesis is change is fractal, which means that as you all know, fractals are patterns that repeat from micro to macro. And so what we are maybe investigating together is that the personal, the interpersonal, and the systemic are deeply connected. And the shifts and changes that I make in the personal, and they sort of reflect in its fractal nature in the interpersonal and the systemic. And so when Gandhi or Dr. King worked with this thesis that in order to walk into a world that I want to inhabit, that I want to see, I have to begin embodying that world right now. You know, so if I want to see a world where there is beauty or justice or empathy, I begin to actually call in that in my own heart, in my own body, and I relate to myself, to my colleagues and comrades, and also the so-called opponent or oppressor from that place. And so I'm not saying this is the only way to do it, but I am interested in investigating that hypothesis with you. And the third is that we are going to see what it means to create a movement that is about how can we resist to heal and to build, not necessarily to shut down, but to open up. What does it mean when we go into a direct action space and we are inviting healing instead of using nonviolence as a tool to impose my will on another? because inadvertently or subconsciously this begins to happen, and we have all seen that even our activism becomes a tool to win, because we have a tremendous amount of confidence and clarity that my viewpoint is the right viewpoint. And so I'm going to go and I'm going to win my viewpoint when I'm on the field. And so again, we are investigating that aspect of our activism. So I'm hoping, it's a little weird doing this on Zoom. I have done large sort of, gatherings with, maybe this number of people, but in a room over several days. So I'm also just orienting myself to go into this material over Zoom. So please sort of play with me here. um, so I want to take a bit of a risk as we start out. I don't know how this is going to go, but we'll all find out how it goes. So I'm going to give you all a scenario. And the scenario is that because we are talking about animal liberation, I feel one scenario is that let's imagine the lockdown or COVID is magically gone, and you are going to a friend or a family gathering, and it's summer and people have decided to barbecue. Your hosts have decided to do a barbecue, and you show up there and there's meat being cooked, and you feel disturbed, and you decide to maybe engage with the host or someone else in that space, maybe a friend or a family member, around maybe veganism. And I think most of you might be nodding your heads and going, oh, I know this situation. Uh, so I'm wondering if two people would be brave enough right now to do a bit of a role play where you would act as two different parties in this engagement and in this scenario, and show us what does it look like when that conversation does not go well. So maybe take like 3 or 4 minutes and maybe just act it out. So I don't know if is there anyone here who feels brave enough to be someone who is not a vegan or a vegetarian. And I'm going to try to see if I can see you. I can't see everyone's faces, so maybe the folks who have their video on, maybe someone might want to raise their hand.
It looks like Madhu has volunteered in the chat.
Thank you, Madhu. So thanks for, let me see if I can find you here. Do I find you here?
Madhu is unmuted now.
Thank you. I'm not seeing their face. Is your video on?
Yes, it's on now. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I see you. All right, so you're not the vegan or vegetarian. And then I would request someone who wants to play the role of the vegan activist.
Okay.
Who would that be? Someone brave enough to do this role play and have some fun doing it. Do we have a volunteer?
I don't see any hands yet.
Jess, do I see your hand? Thank
Oh.
you, Jess. Really appreciate it. So what the two of you are doing you're just acting out a scenario where maybe for just 3 or 4 minutes, where this conversation is not going well. So yeah, feel free to start at any point. So Jess, you're approaching Madhu and you're basically, asking them, trying to see if they would want to give up being a meat eater.
Is Madhu the cook? Is she barbecuing or is she just a guest?
Whatever Madhu wants to be.
Yeah, I'm barbecuing the
Okay.
bad stuff, but the good stuff for me, yeah. So I'm
That
barbecuing the body parts, and you come to me. I'm sorry if that's
that searing carcass smells really gross. I don't know how to get away from that awful smell of burning flesh. Well, why did you choose to eat animals?
Oh, it smells really good to me. And this is what we've been doing for years, and like everybody for hundreds and hundreds of years. And I don't know what you're talking about. You kind of like, can you just go and eat your vegetables? I have some lettuce for you there.
Oh yeah, that's going to be real filling lettuce. Did you not think that people wouldn't want to participate in this mass slaughter and are you saying that I'm somehow the weirdo for not wanting to participate in your slaughter fest here? I'm supposed to be provocative and rude.
Correct, yes, Jess, you're doing great. Thank you.
No, I don't think you're a weirdo or anything. I think you're a cool person, but I have my choice and I choose whatever I want to do in my life. So can you just leave me alone and my friends alone? Like,
Well, how is it your choice? I don't think the pigs would say it was your choice. I mean,
well, I love my bacon, so I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't think bacon loves being bacon, though. Bacon screamed when it was slaughtered. Does that make you feel good? Does death taste good to you?
Not right now, because I'm trying to cook it for my friends and my family, and we all loving it, and you're kind of ruining our dinner. Sorry to say
Well,
that.
I think you ruined that pig's dinner for a long time. What if it was your cat or your dog? Would you throw your
Oh no, that's
puppy in
gross. No, you can't.
Yeah,
That's really
super
gross.
gross.
No,
But-
I love my dogs. My dogs are my babies. I take them out every day, and please do not talk like that, because
Well,
that's
maybe the pig was
Start wrapping up in like 30 seconds. So keep going. Wrap it up within a minute. Yeah.
But yeah, I just don't know why you think pigs are like somehow different from kittens. Just because they look a little bit
Kittens
different.
are so cute, and I can cuddle with them. I know what pigs you're talking about. I never seen them. I know what they are. I just love my bacon.
Don't you think it's going to give you a heart attack having all that cholesterol?
We all gonna die one day, anyways.
All right. On that note,
Sorry, that felt really weird. Those are not
Sorry.
the things I
Sorry.
think and don't say.
Oh my God.
I feel like I attacked Madhu, so I am
Oh,
sorry.
no, I'm sorry that I was coming from the different angle, because that's what I hear all the time from people. So I just
Yeah.
sorry.
really appreciate Jess and Madhu. Big sort of sense of sending you some love for doing this tough act for us. Really, thank you for volunteering and showing this. Would maybe a couple of people very, very briefly want to share what you felt happened here? That just very brief reflections.
Maybe I'll invite folks to type reflections into the chat. And if you'd like to share a verbal reflection, just type an asterisk into the chat like I am about to do. And that'll let me know to unmute you.
So I'm going to read out what I'm reading in the chat. Thank you, both of you. You were very good. The ladies did a great job. And then coming to the reflections, they didn't seem like they were understanding each other. Personal attacks. I can't believe that the person kept listening to you that long. Usually people just go away or shut me down, right? Withdrawal is also a form of passive aggression. Someone else is saying, no one's mind was going to be changed in this interaction, right? The meat eater felt attacked personally, making it a personal diet issue instead of providing the animal's point of view and treatment. I'm sorry, I'm not reading all of them, but hopefully everyone can read all the chat. But overall, what we are reading is there was a communication breakdown. So would people want to just take a few minutes to go into breakout rooms and just make some reflections of what do you think would have actually helped in this situation? Like, and talk from your own personal eye experience, not trying to sort of fix or solve anyone, but just from your own eye experience. Like, what do you think would have supported you in that interaction? So I'm going to give you 2 prompts when you go into your breakout room. One is, think about any emotion of grief, fear, anger, or helplessness that you might be feeling when you think about the suffering of an animal when you might go to an event or a gathering like this. So just reflect on these emotions and what do you particularly feel? So just think about that. And then the second prompt is, how would you interact when you're feeling the charge of these emotions of either grief or anger or fear or helplessness? Is that sounding clear enough? Okay, I think so. All right, so Eden, would you be willing to send people into groups of 3 in the breakout rooms? And you'll be in the breakout room for about 8 minutes, and each person will get about you'll be in the breakout room for 9 minutes, and each person will get 3 minutes to talk about these 2 prompts. Okay, Aiden, is that clear?
Yep, you should all be invited to a breakout room now. And I've just left the prompts in the chat, so you should be able to see them when you get into your breakout rooms.
So everyone has an option of joining the breakout room.
All right, and just checking for the folks who are still in the room here, are any of you hoping to be in a breakout room to discuss? If so, I can add you to one. Probably just folks who are maybe not at their devices right now or not wanting to participate.
So Aiden, if you could call them back around.
I'll wash my hands.
Really quickly, sorry, Nirali. Just checking if anyone here in the main room trying to participate in the breakout room.
Different mountain gym, yeah. Country music festivals.
Okay.
They're a thing. Yeah, does not mean that they're.
Okay, sorry about that.
They are, because Chris had pretty,
What were you saying, Nirali? Oh.
Around 6:13, around that time.
Okay, 6:13. I will call them back. Lyndall, you don't need to have a camera to be in a breakout room. Would you like me to add you to one? And for Chris and if anyone else who just joined from the waiting room, if you'd like me to add you into a breakout room, just let me know. Okay, Lyndall. Go ahead, and you should have an invite now, Lyndall. Just let me know in the chat, anyone, if you're going to join the room. Thank you. Bye, thanks a lot. We do have
Maybe make it like 6:14 or something, like give people more time, sounds like.
Okay, I will send them an announcement. With, I'll say 5 minutes left right now. There were some first-time Zoom folks on the call, so I should have done the full Zoom rundown
That's okay.
next time. You know,
It's crazy. ALOA's had over like 2,200 registrants, like throughout all of the events, like independent emails.
that's a lot.
Why don't all those people join? Yeah, right? Isn't that crazy?
I wonder how many people have attended the session.
You're not muted.
I'm not muted. Lyndall. Lyndall, I tried to assign you to a new room, to 14. Not sure if you have the ability to join it. All right, Chris, we'll just be out of, we'll be done in 4 more minutes here, so. For folks just coming into the meeting, we're out in breakout rooms for the next 3 minutes, and then we'll be coming back together. So you can just hang tight for a couple minutes here.
Simba, why are you walking weirdly?
All right, they've got 60 more seconds in the breakout rooms. Folks will give another 30 seconds for everyone to come back in from the breakout rooms, and then we'll get started. All right, I think everyone's back now, so.
Thank you. So you have the two prompts also in the chat here that I gave you before you went into the breakout room. And I would just love to hear maybe 2 or 3 reflections of a couple of people, keeping it brief again. If maybe 2 or 3 people want to share what you spoke about.
Yeah, just a reminder, in addition to sort of typing reflections into the chat, if you type an asterisk into the chat like I just did, I'll unmute you so you can share verbally. All right, Bailey. Go ahead,
Hey
Bailey.
everybody. So when I was with my group, and I had an awesome group, in my group I talked about an example of how like meat eating and coronavirus have become like intertwined, but people don't, well, I mean they are intertwined, but people don't recognize that one caused another. So basically I was in a grocery store one time, and everyone was like, where's the meat? Where's the meat? Freaking out about that. And I posted on my Snapchat story, kind of like, why are people doing this? I don't understand. And it was a very like anger-fueled response. And I actually ended up losing some like personal relationships because of that. So now I'm learning to kind of go at it more with compassion and not just be blinded by like angry emotions. So go at it with basically facts and compassion to try to encourage my friends and family and others rather than causing a divide between these two communities.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bailey. I think what you're saying is so important, and it also sort of goes across the board with some of these other emotions, because when we feel this charge of energy, of anger, of disgust, of fear, of grief around these issues, and if we are not careful, we end up bringing that energy into our activism. And you just saw in sort of the role play that the person who is probably the CEO or a upper management from running a factory farm, they already have had to build so many walls in order to uh, continue the abuse that happens in a factory farm, both to animals and also the workers, right? And they already have built emotional, psychological, spiritual walls. And then when we go with this energy of anger or hatred, we are also building a wall. So it's like one wall against another wall. And so we don't see a lot of effective transformation happening in that form of activism. And we all have experienced that. I have been to countless protests where that is what is happening. And honestly, at some point in my activist career, I started getting bored standing in those protests. And I'm like, I don't know why I'm here. What am I doing here? This is not the world I want to live in, but I'm not embodying the kind of world I want to live in. So it was complicated. Also, from another perspective, if we really just sort of deconstruct everything down to energy. What I mean by that is, for example, when I walk into a room with a group of people who have very regulated, healthy, spacious, generous nervous systems, I can feel the energy of sitting in a circle like that, as compared to a group where it's very dysregulated, right? When I walk into a room or a space or a home where I can sense into the energy of different places, right? It makes me feel a certain way. So if we are sensitive, we begin to experience the energy of spaces and circles and communities. Even in this moment, there's an energy that we can feel even in the Zoom session. So when we start deconstructing everything down to energy, what is the kind of energy that I am bringing into my direct action in the field? And in this case, even this Jessie approaching Madhu and engaging with her on a difficult issue, I would think of it as a direct action moment. She's on the field. And so in that field, like, what is the energy that I'm creating there? Because that is going to affect the possibility of transformation. And one of the things that I have noticed in my experiences when it has been effective is that a group of people, no matter how well intentioned they are, but if they are functioning from just the place of the intellect, there will be rights and wrongs, and they will keep arguing about whose sort of way is the best way. In order for this to become effective, we will have to learn how to speak to each other's hearts, how to engage the heart, how to engage vulnerability of each other, and find some gap there. And the only way for me to engage with another person's vulnerability is by taking the risk of being vulnerable myself. And what does it mean to be vulnerable? Brené Brown, who has done a lot of research on vulnerability, she defines vulnerability as this capacity to enter uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. And so this is tough work, because I'm inviting people into this place, and maybe they will enter this place. It's an invitation. So one of these conversations I was having with Joanna Macy, who's also a very well-known activist, and this is just a very recent conversation I was having with her on the phone, and we were talking about how the possibility that we are creating is we are creating the possibility of offering choice to another person. In the role play, when it wasn't working, we could also see there wasn't a lot of choice being offered to each other. There was just like, this is how it is. But in this capacity to invite people into a different dimension of conversation, you are taking the risk of inviting them into a choice. And to me, that literally, personally for me, that just explodes my mind and my heart to even hear that. It's a huge thing when I'm in conflict with someone, when I'm genuinely not, there's a difference of opinion, of view, and yet I'm taking the risk of offering choice to each other. And I don't know what will happen from there, but there is a possibility that has opened up. And many of the tactics or sort of tools that I learned and studied quite deeply in Gandhi's nonviolent freedom movement or King's nonviolent actions was also creating these moments of total surprise to stun the other party with these kind of choices, to shock them, where they are predicting a certain narrative pattern. And the disruptive force of nonviolent action is that you disrupt the coherency of the predictable narrative pattern by really bringing the power of the heart. So just a sense of reflecting back on what Bailey said, and I want to continue hearing maybe a couple more people about your reflections.
All right, we'll hear from Z next. So should be able to unmute yourself now, Z.
Okay, I think it worked. Hey
Hi,
y'all.
Z.
I think, like, for me, I'm an intersectional vegan, and I am involved in a lot of liberation struggles of non-humans and humans. And a lot of the time I just feel helpless because a lot of the actions I want to take would land me in a cage myself, like just freeing non-humans in slaughterhouses and like freeing incarcerated people from their cages and things like that. And I think a lot of the ways I deal with, like, especially engaging people that, like the awesome speaker was saying, kind of have walls put up, is point out that, like, one, I was there kind of being vulnerable about the fact that, like, I used to eat animals, and I used to not think about the fact that I was subjugating, like, others, farm workers, the non-humans. And just pointing out that we were all tricked by this system, and that, like, part of becoming vegan is not being involved in non-human animal suffering as much as you can, and also like freeing yourself from the system that wants you to unknowingly do harm to these animals, to yourself, and to the planet. And just that, like, you know, it's a huge part of just freeing yourself and kind of bringing that perspective. And it helps me be more calm and less upset. And usually the person doesn't expect that and then listens a little bit better.
Wow. Wow. Thank you, Z. That's so meaningful to hear. And also thank you for bringing the perspective of the systemic and the interconnectedness, because we begin to see even one of the reasons, I think, and I could be wrong, but this is a guess, this is not a study or a scientific proof, but one of the reasons I think like people eat meat is because they want to experience a sense of feeling alive or life force, and the capitalist and sort of the system has just made people so disconnected from life force, or from this, that maybe like meat is probably replenishing, or it's giving them something, it's clearly giving them something that the kind of lives that we have created in this society is not giving them. And so we begin to start investigating, like what are, I mean, there have to be many more interconnected reasons why this is happening. So thank you for that comment, Z. Would one more person want to share anything?
I will hear from Olivier. So there you go.
Hi, Nirali. Hi, everyone. I get that in order for us to connect between two different parties, we have to connect more at a heart level, like you were saying, and that we have to show up more vulnerable to show the way of the heart towards us, at least. But how do you move, you know, from another state, from a state of like anger, from a state of grief into a place of vulnerability? Can you just give like
Yes,
which
absolutely.
perspective, which perspective or yeah, do you take?
Sorry, say the last sentence again, Olivia.
Which perspective do you take, to access this state?
Yes. So I think what we have been is, and that was sort of the, thank you for that question, because that's my segue into the next piece. So what we have been establishing so far in this workshop is that um, I cannot just go straight from the emotions of fear, anger, grief, helplessness, hatred. I cannot go from that to activism. Something needs to happen in between those two states. Because if I just go from that to that, I'm already triggered. My own energetic field is dissonant and distorted, and so I'm just sort of, jokingly we say it's a leaky faucet trauma vomit that we end up doing on the other person or in our activism. And we have seen that that is not effective. So then what we begin to inquire is that, what do I do with these emotions, as Olivier is asking? How do I transmute them, transform them in order to come to more coherence when I actually act? This is a very demanding ask. And to be honest, not everyone wants to do that, because it will be emotionally demanding. It will disrupt our sense of identity and ourselves. Because when we begin to see the emotion of, for example, anger coming up, in some of my workshops, we do an entire 1 or 2 day process around anger. And it's something I cannot just do it right now, also because it might be triggering for some people to kind of invoke it and not, do the whole process. So I'm not going to go into the whole process here. But the idea essentially is to invite that anger, to deeply make space in the safety of my home, or in my container, or in the safety of a community that feels safe, and actually honor and respect the anger, to really let it physically move through my body. So there would be certain meditative processes of inviting, allowing that anger to move through, and to begin to see anger as a messenger, that the anger is here to actually give me some important information. And so as I begin to do that process, I also begin to see that I feel anger, and within somewhere that anger, you might discover that there is also a passion for justice, a passion for healing that I might have in the world. That is one of the reasons why I'm having this anger. And so you begin to start going through the entire process of it. And it's a very somatic process. It is not just something that you're doing cognitively, but you're really engaging with your whole body in that process. So with anger, I might see that what there is also a passion for justice. Also, we begin to see that when I get hurt or someone else gets hurt, there is an impact that happens. So let's take an example that someone did something where I felt hurt. I felt an impact of that. Now, if I don't really engage with this impact, one of the two things can happen. Either I will externalize the anger that comes from it, and I will scar others with that anger. I will continue that chain of hurt. Or I will drink that anger, I will internalize it, and it will turn into hurting myself. So, for many people, and somehow interestingly, especially for women, it shows up more, the internalizing of anger part. And it shows up as self doubt, self shame, self blame, a very strong inner critic, all of that. So, you actually pull up that energy of anger, and with some of these meditative processes and psychosomatic processes, you begin to actually bring attention to it, and you start feeling and releasing it. Similarly, with grief, that's kind of our topic here today. With grief, you begin to see that I'm having grief, but the reason deep down I have grief is because in equal measure I feel love. So you begin to experience, like, where is the love here? And you really start including and inviting both to coexist, the grief and the love. And we will do a short process on that today. The third one is, oftentimes when we feel a fear, the sort of the inversion of fear is trust and hope. So while I feel fear, I also have, like, for example, a lot of us are feeling fear right now with what's happening in the world. But it also is connected to the kind of world we imagine we wish to live in. So there is a sense of vision, trust, and hope. And that's creating the fear. But if my motivation for activism is fear, that's not going to actually support me or the world. So I have to actually flip that, I have to transmute that, and actually access that trust and hope. And from that place, I can act in the world. And that's what I invite the sort of the opponent as well into the trust and the hope. And, like, ask them, what kind of a world do you want to live in? And actually that could be the interesting wedge in the conversation. Similarly, with helplessness, the flip side is creativity. So can I choose creativity over oppression? And there is so much potential and capacity and juice for creativity in our world. I continue being amazed and sort of uplifted by that. So I want to invite you into a very small little activity. Is write down 3 or 5 things that you feel grief about in the world, or around animals, or even your own life. You'll have about 4 minutes, and just write down 3 to 5 things that you deeply feel grief about.
Do you want people to share these in the chat, Nirali, or just?
No, just for themselves. Write it for yourself. Hi, Paula, do you have a question? No. I can't hear you. You're unmuted. Do you have to say anything, Paula?
No.
Okay, no problem. So just taking one more minute. Nancy, do you have a question? No, okay, sorry. Okay, when I see someone raising their hand, I think. So take a moment now to look at the flip side of the grief and just see where is the love. And so maybe you can pick one or two of the things that you have written and just work on its flip side. And write down maybe a couple of sentences about the love that you might feel for that which grieves you.
Raleigh, a couple folks are asking if you could sort of ask that question again.
So first you wrote down a few things about the grief. What is it that brings grief to you? And now pick one of those and write the inversion of it. Why do you feel grief? What is the love in that? Because we often feel grief because we love something. So what is it that you love? I would invite maybe one or two people to, if you're willing, to just give us examples of what you wrote. What is it that you're grieving and the inversion, the love in that? If you could share that. Maybe you can write it on the chat or you can raise your hand. You can use a different word. Maybe it's not love, maybe it's empathy or compassion, whatever. Maybe it's caring.
Let's hear from Bijou and then we'll hear from Emma and Beth.
Hey everybody. Yeah, I wrote down artificial insemination. When I see those videos of artificial insemination and the mother cow is walking away, so unknowing of what is happening, what has happened, that just brings me so much grief. And so to flip that and think about the love, what I love is motherhood. You know, what I love is birth and life and the miracle of it and the bond of mother and child, and knowing that that is has been manipulated and is going to be taken from her is just a devastating experience for me to watch. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Viju. So this is such an important example that you're offering. And I think a lot of us can like deeply resonate, and I mean, I feel moved by it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like, how can we really honor the grief and mourn it, like create rituals to mourn it, in our lives, like maybe write about it, maybe like, create some kind of a altar space and a ritual, and maybe light a candle, like really maybe a community ritual, and mourn it, because it is a loss, and we have to relearn our sort of ancestral, traditional teachings of how to mourn. We have forgotten that. And so I think it's really meaningful to allow the grief. And then also, as you said, like really talk about, really engage with this beautiful miracle of motherhood, and really sort of bring our energy there. And like, how can that love for that, appreciation, the wonder and the awe for that begin to give us ideas, creative ideas of activism, creative visuals, creative sort of even direct action things that we can do on the field. What are those things that can be created? What are the songs that can be written? What are the ways in which we engage people?
So may I offer what happened
Yes.
for me?
Yes.
So my son died as a baby 20 years ago, and I've done lots of grief work around that, and I'm a therapist myself and do lots of anyway. But I went vegan 2.5 years ago after witnessing. I'd not seen any of the video footage, and after witnessing the calves being taken away from the mother, I went vegan within 30 seconds of the video. I was like, done. And I went and got vegan tattoo on my chest. So it was, when you say creative, how can we create art? How can we create something that grabs attention? And so I speak from that place immediately. So
I mean, it's such a powerful story. Like, even the space from which you shared, like, I feel so deeply moved by your, like, I could feel when you spoke about the love for motherhood, even before you, like, I could feel that. There was a transmission in the way you shared.
Thank
So
you.
thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Would anyone else want to say or speak to this question around?
Sorry, so we can hear from Beth. So Beth, you should be able to speak now.
Oh, hi. So I wrote down one that's really personal, and then I wrote one that's more like collective. So the first one I wrote down was my cat Panther died in November, and for the flip side of that, where is the love, I wrote that he was my best friend, and the word compadre came to mind because he was like my best friend for like 18 years. So that actually ties in with the next one. The second thing I wrote about grief was animals in the animal exploitation industries. And I know that's like really broad, but then I wrote for the flip side, where is the love in that, that they're fellow earthlings. So they're like really similar to me and to Panther, and they're unique and wonderful individuals. So just being able to recognize that they are individuals, and they are as unique as each of us are, and then just the unfairness of that and the horror of that is like the grief part. So yeah, those are my two.
Thank you. Yeah, and to really express and transmit the beauty and wonder of these animals and their intelligence and their, like the sort of the the goodness that they bring, and to transmit that and to help people see that can move their hearts. So thank you so much for that, Beth. Anyone else wants to share? Aiden, is there? I saw one Rob also raising his hand.
Oh, I have George.
George, okay.
George, okay. All right, George.
How's it going? So,
Hi, George.
hi. So, a grief of mine, I thought it was impoverished, and I kind of connected it to men and women. As far as being impoverished, having the lesser things in life, I had an issue when I was younger, just seeing like someone on the street corner of my neighborhood, and I grieved. I had empathy for that person. So as I got older, I joined the organization, and now we're feeding them plant-based meals and giving them any resources they need as far as like, anything that happens to them. Having other people that are skilled at that, giving them the resources that they might need or might help them out in that case. So that's it.
Yes. So you're already sort of transmuting it and sort of putting it into like expressing your love and your care in the world. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, George.
No problem.
All right. One last person, if you want to maybe answer this, or if there's any other reflection that you want to share of what we have been talking so far.
There's lots of kind of sharing in the chat. I don't see any other hand raises, but.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, let's hear from Emma.
Hi.
Hi,
So,
Emma.
hi. I second guess this a little bit, I think in part because it does feel a little vulnerable. One that came up for me really strongly, because it's something that I've been working with anyway, because I feel like I just feel it all the time. I live next to a neighbor who has 4 cows, and 2 of them are calves. And when the first one came, I could hear it calling for its mother for 6 weeks. And that calf and also another calf now live on, they're probably like 6 to 8 foot long chains. And that's their life. And I reached out to a local sanctuary to see if they were somehow liberated, if they would be able to, with that, what exactly we could do. And when I spoke with her pretty extensively about my connection with the neighbors, which is nothing, they just don't seem very interested in connecting with people, with me anyway, with my family, because I guess we're just in very different cultures. And I'm not from here. I live in a really rural area and I'm not from here. So I think that they just kind of see us as outsiders. And I really want to be able to do something for these animals. And I don't know if I can. And I have a lot of grief about it. So I feel like this was powerful for me, because I find that I don't even go down there and visit with them as much as I would like to. He did give me permission to do that, which is, but because I have so much, I feel very, it's really heavy. And I am very focused on trying to get myself into a place where I can be more effective for animal oppression as a whole, not just these cows. So, but anyway, what I wrote was, such sweet, gentle souls, curious and eager to love and connect. And I think if I'm able to hold the love of connecting with them and how sweet they are. And instead of seeing the repression first and foremost, but seeing their beauty as beings, it makes it that much easier for me to build a bridge between me and them, and who knows, perhaps even myself and these people, if they're able to see that.
Yes.
So thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you so much, Emma. And I feel like, how can you feel the grief and keep also feeling resource? Because this is also a lot to do with our sort of physical and capacity of our nervous system, of how much we can take. Because with everything that's happening in the world, like, we get overwhelmed, right? And that's natural. Like, it's natural to feel overwhelmed. And some of us, I think I'm a little bit similar to you, is I feel a lot. I feel deeply, I feel very empathically. And so I also, at equal measures, need tools in my life that can really bring a lot of resource in my body and my heart. And so I keep, like, for me, it is meditation, it is engaging with, I don't know, with flowers and art and some of these things that I do. Like, I have a few different things in my life that are so deeply resourcing and also joyful, that from that place of resource, I engage. I really engage with the difficulty, with the challenges of something like what you're speaking about, your neighbor, right? But to engage from that place, like, to find ways to get extremely resourced and then engage with that, because then we will have capacity to really allow the grief to move through us. There is nothing wrong in any emotion. There are certain meditation practices where they say we should not have anger or this or that. In my opinion, there is nothing wrong. In fact, all emotions are important and healthy. The problem, the suffering, happens when they get stuck. Right? So what we are learning through resource is we are creating spaciousness so the emotions can be present and that they can also move. Because beneath, as they move, they also end up giving us some important teachings, some important message, and then there is potential for being empowered and for being creative. So try to see, Emma, like, how can you really resource yourself, and from that place keep engaging with this challenge. And my wish and hope is that you will find creative ways to be with even the neighbors, and also to hopefully see their beauty. Like, there has to be something in them that can feel inspiring, that feels like, oh, I really care about. And to meet them, to work with them from that space might be a possibility. And so this is one of the important teachings of nonviolence. So as we are coming to an end and wrapping up, I want to leave you all with a little so-called prompt or homework, or just something that you can do on your own, is make 4 columns or 4 pages in your notebook, and on one page write down 5 things that bring grief in you, and which is something you already did. And then write the flip side of that, is where is the love or the care or the beauty. The second is take 5 things that you feel fear about, and in that find hope and trust. Experience sort of the flip of that, and write that down. That what is it that I can trust? What is it that I can be hopeful about? What is it that it's worth being hopeful about? The third one is take anger and write the flip side of that. Like, where is my passion here? It's important. It's good to have passion for justice, passion for goodness in the world. So I'm angry because I feel passionate about something, so write about your passion. And the fourth is write 5 things that you feel helpless about, that you feel disempowered or despair, and write about that, and then flip that and see where is the creativity here. Because when we feel something, despair, we also go into guilt and shame and all of that, and that's not a helpful and constructive sort of loop. So flip that and turn into the sort of the creativity. Choose creativity over oppression. So I want to end here, and I really hope that to some degree, to whatever degree, this was helpful and meaningful to you. And yeah, really want to thank Aiden and Joanna for holding it together. There's no way I can do this without you. Anything you want to end with, Aiden and Joanna? Anything you both want to say as we end?
We've got nothing to add other than just thank you so much, Nirali, for joining us this evening and sharing with this community. This is really, we've talked on the phone about this session in advance, so that I really think this is kind of an area that our movement, this is really a growing edge for our movement, something that we as a community really need to be exploring into and processing. So really, really grateful.
Thank you. Joanna, anything you need to say or you want to share before we end?
No, just again, a huge thank you to you, Nirali, and thanks to everyone for being here. And yeah, I think, this kind of self-work is really important, like you've been saying this whole session, to our work. And so it's just really inspiring to see how many people are taking time on a Thursday evening to work on ourselves. So yeah, really grateful for everyone here.
Thank you. And do remember that this work that you're doing is, in my experience, there is a fractal nature to change. So when you're flipping these and transmuting and transforming them within you, I do feel there is a huge ripple effect of that in the entire world. And so really deep bows to all of you for your willingness to do this difficult but meaningful work. And lots of love, lots of well-being and good health and strength to all of you during this time. Be well, and hopefully our paths will cross again. Take care. Goodbye.
Thanks, Nirali. Bye. Bye, everyone.